Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for inviting me to the appearance celebration of my dear god brother Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Gopal Krishna Maharaj was a GBC in Canada, where I joined in the late 70s until ongoing. Even now, he was the GBC in Canada, but due to health, he wasn't so active lately. But we have many adventurous pastimes together. Gopal Krishna Maharaj was a manager in the Pepsi company. He got a Master of Business Administration from a prominent university in France called Sorbonne University. And then he transferred over to Canada. And his first visit was to Srila Prabhupada was around 1968. Prabhupada was in Montreal, Canada for a couple of months. Devotees had a nice temple there. And so Gopal Krishna Maharaj at that time was running the business in Pepsi company. So when he first came to the temple, he had heard about this Hare Krishna movement, that some hippies had become devotees. He wasn't a hippie, he was a professional person. So he came into the temple and he noticed beautiful paintings of Radha and Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, and Lord Ram Leela pastimes. And during Bhagavatam class, Maharaj was going around to every painting and he was offering loud glorification, Jai Ram, Jai Sita, Jai Radha Krishna, like that. And of course, the devotees were giving Bhagavatam class at the time. And so, oh, sir, please, little quiet, please, we're giving Bhagavatam class. So then Srila Prabhupada spoke to Gopal Krishna Maharaj. At that time, many Indians were in Montreal, quite a few Indians who were professionally educated as doctors and accountants, high education. They would emigrate to Canada and the US, and they would visit the temple. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he was unique because he wanted to join the devotees right away. He wasn't going to, just be kind of a life member or anything. So Srila Prabhupada would tell him, he would say, why don't you shave up? And so Gopal Krishna Maharaj very quickly joined the ISKCON movement and became one of the leaders and managers and the pioneers of establishing Krishna consciousness in the West as well as in India. So, being the GBC for Canada in the late 70s, he would come quite often and visit the major temples there. My temple was Vancouver, which is on the west side of Canada. And he would attend some television interviews. Now at this time, you have to understand that there was a lot of pushback from the media and from people in general, because the Hare Krishna devotees, we would go out every day. Srila Prabhupada was telling us, go out, chant Hare Krishna, distribute my books. Because many people were joining, there was a certain amount of animosity towards ISKCON. The media didn't really like ISKCON so much. They would portray us as a kind of a cult. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj was being interviewed by this man who really was very rude, very abrupt, very confrontational. And he would ask Gopal Krishna Maharaj questions like, why do you people go out in the streets begging? and what's this all about? Why are you wearing these weird clothes and shaving your head? The usual questions. And he would, this interviewer, this TV host, he would look for weaknesses in the interviewee, and he tried to, expose them. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he would answer in such a strong way. And he said, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone has to surrender to him. And he would preach very strongly. He says, we're simply spreading love of God. Why are you criticizing? We have something good to give. After about 3 or 4 interviews over the period of a few years, this man started to glorify Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He'd say, in the TV studio, he'd say, oh, Gopal, you're such a nice guy. I can't attack you anymore. And he completely won over, Gopal Krishna Maharaj completely won this demoniac fellow over. So I was a book distributor, and so when Gopal Krishna Maharaj was traveling from various cities to our city in the plains, when he met Indian businessmen, he would always sign them up as a life member. Immediately he would sit next to them or walk up to them in the plane, and he would say, I'm with ISKCON, why don't you become our life member? On the spot, he would sign people up for life membership. He was very fired up about engaging everyone wherever he went. He was very bold. And he would always tell me how many books he distributed on the plane when he was flying from, say, Toronto to Vancouver. There's a picture of Gopal Krishna Maharaj behind the Iron Curtain in the USSR, and I think it was in Armenia, and he had gotten the devotees to purchase a little small printing machine, and he was very involved in printing books in Russian language right from the very beginning, before the collapse of the Soviet Union. He was behind the scenes organizing book distribution in Russia. And being Indian, he was able to go to Moscow, and he would they would have these large book fairs in Moscow every year. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj would arrange for Prabhupada's books to be displayed very wonderfully at the book fair in Moscow every year, the annual huge book fair. And he said that people would come and they would take photographs of each page of the book, Prabhupada's books. They didn't trust that the government would allow them to purchase these books. So he's very instrumental in the spiritual revolution of Hare Krishna movement behind the Iron Curtain. In 1983, Gopal Krishna Maharaj brought me to Delhi, and I became the president there. At that time, there were only very few temples in India. In 1983, Prabhupada had recently left the planet. Most of the temples were run by Americans and Westerners. And so he brought me to Delhi at that time. And he would take me around. He wanted to acquire a nice plot of land and build the Glory of India Cultural Center. At that time, our temple was in South Delhi in Greater Kailash. And so he would take me to meet the Home Minister of India. What had happened was we were under suspicion of being CIA agents at that time. There was a lot of communism and a lot of influence from the USSR, and there was propaganda that all us Westerners were CIA agents. And we were on the file, Home Ministry file, suspected CIA agents. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj would take me to meet the Home Minister of India, and he'd have to preach to him that we're a Vaishnava society. We're a bona fide Vaishnava organization. we have no interest but to, wake up India to Krishna consciousness as well, and so on. And he would cultivate this home minister very nicely. And myself, I was a little bit of a fanatic preacher. So when we met these ministers, one time we met Indira Gandhi's, I suppose it was one of her ministers, and we met him in the diplomatic area of New Delhi. New Delhi is a very important city in Asia, as Prabhupada had mentioned. So when Gopal Krishna was trying to speak to the minister, and we're trying to get some land in Delhi, which was almost impossible to get a large amount of land in New Delhi. I mean, it's the capital of India. Very, very difficult to get land. What's to speak of for a temple? He was trying to cultivate this person, and I started preaching that, Maharaj Yudhisthira, he was the king of Bharatvarsh. And he made sure that all the cows were being protected. And I started preaching from the Bhagavatam how Maharaj Yudhisthira was protecting Brahminical culture. And so, there was regular rainfall, and all the mountains were giving jewels, diamonds, gold. I started preaching like this, that leaders should follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Yudhisthira. And the minister was looking at me. And Gopal Krishna elbowed me in the side and said, cool down, cool down. So when we went to various people, there's something called the TNRD. It's the authority, Delhi authority for acquiring land and building, building projects and so on. So every time we would go to these offices, there would be a guard there, and he was paid to block everyone from going to see the city engineers, Mr. Gupta. So when I was going with Gopal Krishna Maharaj, the guard would try to block him. Gopal Krishna Maharaj just walk around him and open the door and go in. And then, of course, the Delhi authority, Mr. Gupta, would just surrender, okay. And then he would start pushing him about getting property to build a temple. So we know that eventually Maharaj convinced Delhi authority to give us over 3 acres in New Delhi. Unbelievable accomplishment. And it was near a beautiful park where we were allowed to landscape the park and make it very beautiful. So we got final permission to purchase that piece of land, 3.2 acres or something. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj comes from quite a well-to-do family, and sometimes we'd visit his relatives. He had an aunt in Greater Kailash too, which is a posh area of Delhi. And so he'd take me with him, and I would meet his relatives and so on. So we would also go for fundraising. So there was a family, they were the Hindujas, extremely wealthy family. They own huge amounts of corporations across the globe. And so Gopal Krishna Maharaj took me to meet the Hindujas in Mumbai, along with some other senior devotees. Sridhar Maharaj was with us. And the day we went there, evening we went there, it was the engagement ceremony of one of the daughters of the Hinduja family. So when Gopal Krishna Maharaj met the Hindujas, he would say, okay, we're doing a beautiful center in New Delhi. the glory of India, and we're promoting the real Bharatvarsh, the real culture of India, you have to give 10 crores. Now, this is like 1986, when 10 crores is probably worth about 40 crores right now. And Mr. Hinduja was, no, Maharaj, that's too much. And Gopal Krishna just keep pushing and pushing. I think eventually the Hindujas gave about 5 crores, but they wanted their name on the front of the building, ISKCON Hinduja, Glory of India. So in the beginning, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he said, okay, no problem, I'll talk to the GBC and we'll get it done, don't worry. But ultimately, the GBC rejected that idea, but he was still able to convince the Hindujas to give a large donation. Thank you very much. A very special day for me. Of all my god brothers, Gopal Krishna Maharaj was closest to me because, of course, he was the GBC in Canada as well as GBCs in India for many, many, many years, 30, 40 years. I wanted to mention that Gopal Krishna Maharaj is very, very merciful to all the devotees. He was very soft-hearted and very considerate of devotees. And anytime I would come to India, he would offer me his card to go from Delhi to Vrindavan. And being old, sometimes I would have to go for operation in Calcutta. That was in the last year. And he would say, no, let me pay for it, let me pay for it. So of course I'd say, Maharaj, no. But he would always send Lakshmi for my operations. So we were together in Montreal, we're together in Delhi. He was always on fire. When he hit the ground, he was just going. I remember in Montreal, 88, 89. Okay, Kripanidhi, I have to meet someone in Baltimore, Washington area. We're in Montreal. He said, get a car, we're going. They just drive down the highway all the way to Baltimore to meet. Of course, in American Canada, many of the Indians are very successful. And he was always raising funds for his temple building projects. So I'd go with him to raise funds. I remember in Delhi, when we were engaged in building the Glory of India Cultural Center, Mr. Dalmia, he had one of the first skyscrapers in Delhi, Vishnu Hari Dalmia, very, very Vaishnava. We would go up to meet him on the top floor, and he always wore dhoti kurta, although he was obviously Dalmia. He's a what, crorepati, you think? And we go and meet him. He had a picture of Gaur-Nitai on behind his chair in his office. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj would preach to him how, we have to spread this Sanatan Dharma, we have to build temples all over India and preach the real message of Rupa Goswami, because Mr. Dalmia, being from Rajasthan, he was connected with Rupa Goswami. And of course, Gopal Krishna Maharaj would always call him up, call him. Okay, can you give 10 crores? It was like fearless, he'd start him at 10 crores. And finally, Mr. Dalmia would negotiate, it's like, Maharaj, please. He was shaking in his chair, Gopal Krishna. No, this is for Lord Chaitanya, And he's preaching so heavy on him, okay, Maharaj. So we get him to commit to 5 crores, Like this is how it worked with Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He'd just be on fire the whole time. We'd be meeting very, very wealthy people in Delhi, Mumbai, mentioned the Hindujas. So he took me to meet the Hindujas in Mumbai. It was a big affair because Mr. Hinduja, one of his daughters, was getting engaged. And he had this huge spread on the ocean. I don't know if you have has anyone here been to Hinduja property in Mumbai? It's in Juhu. It's like heavenly planets. So we went there, and I mentioned that, I mean, the Hindujas were so wealthy, they were flying people in from all over the world for this. It wasn't a marriage, it was an engagement. And there were Rolls Royces and Bentleys all lining the streets. We came from Juhu Temple, so it was quite close. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj, I used to call him Bhagwatpad. We were together and he met Mr. Hinduja, the oldest brother. I mean, these people they own banks in Hong Kong and England. They own the Barclays. I mean, they're infinitely wealthy Sindhis. And Maharaj said, we're building the first big temple in Delhi, Glory of India Cultural Center, glorifying the real culture of India. You must give 10 crores. And so they were negotiating. He was always negotiating. And he was very expert at extracting big donations. So I think eventually they ended up giving 6 crores. At that time in 1986, you can imagine how many crores that is today. I don't know, 40 crores maybe? So he was expert. These are like very, very astute businessmen. It's very difficult to extract money out of them. You know, they're not so like surrendered to Krishna. They're always pinching pennies. Remember, in Europe, Mother Yamuna was with the Hindujas, and they wanted to throw some big luncheon. And they would travel over to Eastern Europe, which was still communist, to buy vegetables to save some money. So they're very expert. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj convinced him, and then he said, one thing is, we want ISKCON Hinduja, Glory of India Cultural Center on the front gate. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj at that time, he said, okay, let me work on the GBC. we can try to make it happen. Ultimately, Mr. Hinduja was convinced not to put his name, you know, and Glory of India Cultural Center. He still gave probably 6 crores. And Mr. Damia gave, I think, 3 crores. In this way, he was going around constantly pushing the envelope, pushing himself. He was always on fire. So in 1986, the first Congress for the Synthesis of Science and Religion was organized by Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj and the BI people. I was involved with that because I was opening up IIT Delhi, Science and Religion, Synthesis of Science and Religion. And I would have Gopal Krishna Maharaj come, a very large hall full of students, and he would preach to them. Basically, not the science so much, but he'd preach that this is your culture, this is your ancient religion. So, of course, IIT Delhi, many of you are going to the West to become wealthy. But always remember, he would always preach, always never forget your roots, your culture, your Sanatan Dharma culture, and he'd preach like that. And like that, I would organize programs for him at the University of Delhi, at JNU also, which was at the time Communist University. Very difficult, but we'd have something like spiritual communism, and we'd preach from Ishopanishad and so on, Ishabhashidam. So it was very enlivening being with Gopal Krishna Maharaj. So the Synthesis of Science and Religion, we brought in some Nobel Award winners. There was a person called George Wald, who was a contemporary of Albert Einstein. He was very friendly with Albert Einstein, most famous scientist at the time. And there was one other Nobel Award winner, Nobel laureate, and then there were some nominees for Nobel Prizes. So it was a big intellectual, big people that came for the synthesis of science and religion. This is the first one. And there were also some very favorable intellectuals from America, like Harvey Cox. He was a big theologian at Harvard University, and he would advise the president of America which of these groups from India were bona fide, because so many gurus and swamis were coming from India, and many of them were cheating people, basically. They weren't giving the full or Sanatan Dharma, the Bhagavad Gita and so on, personalist philosophy. So when the president of America would inquire, Harvey Cox gave Srila Prabhupada like full-on, complete support and glorification of Srila Prabhupada. In fact, I was there with Harvey Cox in Mumbai at a luncheon, and he said, actually, if I was younger, I would become a Hare Krishna devotee. He's a very big person. So anyway, Gopal Krishna Maharaj was approached by Swarup Damodar Maharaj. What had happened was we're flying all these people in, setting them up in, nice places, big splash. And they ran out of money. Swarup Damodar Maharaj is an intellectual. He's a scientist. He's a preacher. Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he's a mover and shaker. He knew how to get lots of Lakshmi. So we needed someone to bail us out. And so Swarup Damodar Maharaj, he said, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, we're really short on Lakshmi. And Gopal Krishna Maharaj, okay, let's go. So he went around to the wealthy people in Mumbai. He made some phone calls, and suddenly all this Lakshmi came in, He's able to save us at this World Congress for the synthesis of science and religion. So he was always bailing out something. He's always saving some situation. In 1986, it was his 5th centennial of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We had 12 million people here at Mayapur from all over Bengal. It was huge. The government of India, the military, had to put up tents along the Ganga for people to stay, and the military had to come and help. Anyway, at that time, there was some problems in ISKCON. The history was a little difficult to talk about, but many of the leaders, they always wanted to have big, very lavish situation. Wherever they went, they wanted a very lavish situation. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he would come to Delhi quite often, where I was running the place. And his disciples, of course, wanted to always glorify him, and they made very expensive furniture in his room in Delhi. But at that time in 86, some of the appointed gurus that Prabhupada had appointed, they fell down. So there's this big situation going on. The gurus are getting too lofty. And so Gopal Krishna Maharaj came into his room, and I said, Maharaj, your disciples built this beautiful bed for you. It was like a European style bed, and couch and everything. And it was very opulent the way they made it, special wallpaper and so on. Gopal Krishna Maharaj, when I came to see him at night, he rolled out his mat and he was sleeping on the floor. He said, no, not for me. Like this. So very exemplary, very humble. And many times he would admonish his disciples, his godbrothers who were gurus, you should practice this Trinadapi Sunechena. So like that, it was very enlivening to spend a lot of time with Gopal Krishna Maharaj. We would go to Vrindavan quite a bit from Delhi, and he was developing the Vrindavan project. The MVT was not built yet, so he was involved in getting the Lakshmi for the MVT property there. Wherever he went, he was working. So one time, a gentleman, he owned some property, some land in Gurugam. That's South Delhi, Gurugam. What part? It's in Haryana, but it's near Delhi, right near Delhi. And so we had Gopal Krishna, let's go look at this property, this land. It was just land. So we went down there, and it was, I don't know, 5 acres, and I don't know, it was big land. It was pasturing ground, so there were some cows in the pasture. And there was one old cow. Now, I was wearing white, so apparently Prabhupada said cows don't have very good eyesight. But Gopal Krishna Maharaj was wearing saffron. And there was this old cow, and I didn't notice, but I had my back, and this cow started charging Gopal Krishna Maharaj. You know, he had this colorful saffron outfit on, and he said, "Kripanidhi." And I turned around, I saw this cow charging Maharaj. And so I jumped in front. It was an old cow, so it wasn't very strong. And I grabbed the horns, and I kind of stared it out like this. And he went away, and Gopal Krishna Maharaj said, "You saved my life." I said, "No, Maharaj, Krishna saved your life." So we had some nice adventures like this when I was in Delhi. Like I said, when we went to meet officials, at that time, you can understand in the 80s, the Soviet Union and India were very, very close. And the Soviet Union were printing so much communism and distributing it in India, especially around Delhi. So we were under suspicion of being CIA people. And we would try, Gopal Krishna Maharaj would meet Indira Gandhi. And although there was suspicion, many prominent people, like the ambassador to Paris, the ambassador to Japan, they would see Hare Krishnas. And so they would go to the temple in these different countries. And there was this one Mrs. Jha. He had retired, but he was the ambassador to France and the ambassador to Japan. And his wife, she grew up with Indira Gandhi. So like that, she would come to the temple wherever she was, and she would tell Indira Gandhi, no, these are Vaishnavas. These are not CIA people. And other people that we knew in the diplomatic area, they were top, aristocratic people who were friends with the Gandhi dynasty, and they would come to the temple. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj would meet with people and say, "Look, we're not CIA." And sometimes some of them were a little suspicious. So it was difficult to get in the door to meet them. So myself and Gopal Krishna, we would go to these places to meet these ministers. And there was always they're almost like they were being paid to say no to us. No, he's busy right now. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he would just walk right around the guard and push the door open and go inside. And the minister was sitting there. He said, and of course, they have respect for sadhus. In India, the culture is still, you have to respect the saffron, And so what could they say? They were just, "Okay, Maharaj, please sit down. Would you like soft drink, water?" Like this, Gopal Krishna Maharaj would take, he just on fire. He would never take no for an answer. And of course, when we were building the Delhi when we were getting permission for the land in Delhi to purchase this land, of course, there were so many oppositions there. I mean, 3 acres of land in New Delhi. Can you imagine how hard it would be? Right in New Delhi, South Delhi, So every time we went, he would convince the Delhi authorities. And many of them were Hindus, so they were quite sympathetic. But it was the same thing. They'd have secretaries trying to block us, Gopal Krishna would just push the door open and go in. So this was his whole attitude, was for Prabhupada, he was a warrior. And he would tell me, "Kripanidhi, you have to do something big for Prabhupada." He was always pushing, And I would say, "Maharaj, you got to slow down, especially he got, his heart attack and so on. And that was in the 90s. The Maharaj, slow down a little bit. No slowing down. Until his last breath, he was just very, very driven to establish these temples in India. That was his whole drive. So those are some of the stories that I missed. And eventually, of course, we know that he convinced the Home Minister to take us. We were blacklisted by the Home Ministry, suspected CIA agents. And so, I was with him. He'd go and preach to the Home Minister. He was a Maharashtrian. We constantly, every time he came to Delhi, we'd go and meet this man, give him prasadam. And he pretty well won the gentleman over. And they removed us from the blacklist. Okay, you're not CIA, but you're Americans. A lot of us. At that time, most of the devotees were from America and England, Canada, like that. These are the areas where Prabhupada had made many disciples. And so we were building up India at the time. Mayapur was run by Jayapataka Maharaj, Bhavananda Maharaj, and so on. Lots of Americans were here. And I guess the propaganda from Russia, USSR, was be careful. They may be spying on us. I also was reminded by Chaitanya Prabhu that Gopal Krishna Maharaj, he would never, ever waste money. Never. He would never want to waste any money. Every penny he collected, and that was millions and crores of rupees, it was always for the book BBT and building properties, building temples, which was quite a contrast to many of the gurus at the time. So what a wonderful, wonderful god brother of mine. By some great fortune and luck, he was GBC in Canada, and then I served him in New Delhi for 6 years. And it was always a wonderful experience. And we had many nice adventures together, especially around in Delhi. So thank you very much. I don't have much more to say. I think I spoke about him organizing book distribution in Russia. Because of his he was Indian, he could get into Russia quite easily. And he started the first printing machine in the USSR. It was underground preaching. And then he got a Moscow book fair. He got all the books, the BBT books, into the Moscow book fair, and people were taking photographs of each page and going home because they didn't think the government would allow them to read these books. His, far-reaching mission was far-reaching, so many countries, so many places. He was so effective and a wonderful example of a leader who's exhibited such humility and such compassion for rank-and-file devotees like myself. I was just a little guy, and he was very merciful to everyone. Anyone that came from his zone, if they got sick or anything, he would arrange for them to go to the hospitals. He would arrange for them to have cars if they needed a car to go somewhere. Always very, very compassionate and helpful. All glories to Gopal Krishna Maharaj, my favorite senior godbrother. Hare Krishna.